Morning, everybody. Welcome to a unicorn morning. Unicorn is a Wui cliff tea from Fujian Wui Mountains. So that's what we'll be doing today. By the end of today's session, you'll have more information about anthropology surrounding tea in general, more specifically surrounding Wui teas. You'll have experienced unicorn, which among the cliff teas has some very special characteristics to it. So it'll be fun from that perspective. Let's talk shop news to start out with. Some of you have noticed price alterations within the shop. You'll continue to see those price alterations. And for those shoppers who are really crafty, you'll get to the website before I do. I haven't finished upgrading everything on the website, but there are price changes in the works. And there are a couple reasons, and I want to make sure you understand the background to these. We haven't changed prices on the boards, and these are mostly cup prices in a number of years. And they don't reflect the storage costs, the energy costs, the increased cost in rents and so forth that we've experienced here. And so in a way, the tariffs or the threat of tariffs has encouraged us to look at all these costs carefully, because we are also on a small scale trying to backfill some of the teas, which we feel, hey, we should probably strengthen those. It's not going to be a lot, but there are a few of those that we're trying to backfill. So there's additional costs for those. We've also talked to customs people. We've talked to other importers, not of tea, but of other goods that have tariffs on. And they said one of the things which I was unaware of is if something comes in, say today, and it's charged a certain rate, say it's charged the previous rate, which is 10%. And by the way, that was never reflected in the prices as well. We had directly eaten those tariffs. And so all of this is related to the fact that there's price alteration throughout the economy, and we just simply have to keep up, so to speak. Going back to the other thing that we learned is if we bring something in now, what we're being told by our customs people is even if it's only charged 10% because they don't have the actual rules in place, once they do, they'll go back and then send us an additional bill. So the time of getting in tea at zero or low tariffs, we're not in that cycle. The time of unlimited and unself-controlled purchase of tea is over. We can't do that, or we refuse to do that in this environment. And yet the time of us protecting the investment that we have is here right now. And that's why you're seeing price alterations, very specifically cup price alterations. You're also seeing some alterations in the price per ounce, because many of those we've just kept a steady price since for 10 years or 11 years. And that doesn't really reflect the economics. So we're getting sharper at this. And again, the threat or the looming threat of overall increases in our expenses and the actual occurrence of overall increases in our here at the shop is, this is a reality, and we are reflecting those in the prices. So I wanted to share that with you so you're aware of the trend that's going on and why we're doing it. So let's get back to the Wui Mountains. That's a lot more fun to talk about. Wui Mountains in northern Fujian province. This is where these cliff teas come from. Certain regions of the Wui Mountains produce teas that are significantly and demonstrably better than other regions within the Wui Mountains. Our focus is on those top quality regions. When we talk about anthropology, and we have talked about anthropology or the culture of tea, we started that discussion last week, and we talked about Taoists, Buddhists, and Confucianists all living together. I want to expand on that because last week I really didn't get a full chance to expand on that. So let's talk a little bit about legends. So you have the legend of Da Hong Pao, and everybody knows some version of that legend. Basically, a student gets ill, they become an official, emperor's son, wife, or emperor himself fall ill, drink this thing and become better. That's kind of the outline. It's fuzzy because everybody tells a different version. So I captured many of those versions all within that outline. Then, as a reward, the glorious official who was formerly a student comes back and puts a red robe on top, which is a symbol of the emperor's grace and happiness, puts the red robe on top of the Da Hong Pao bushes. So that's, the legend. Who knows whether that really, really happened? But there's a cultural implication to that. And the cultural implication, this type of story really originates with Confucianists, doesn't it? Why? Confucianists like order. Order. What I'm talking about here is they like this sense that you do something for me, and here's the proper cultural response from me for what you did. You're in a certain position vis-a-vis me, either higher or lower in the social order, and here's my response within that social order. So these legends related to the Da Hong Pao origin of Wui tea really have a base culturally in Confucianism. Give me the right order. Show me how one is supposed to behave in a hierarchy, constrain, and show me how in the hierarchy, when I'm in control, how I'm supposed to reward people. Okay, when you explain it like that, or when I explain it like that, it becomes a different type of story, doesn't it? Tells you a little bit about the culture surrounding the Wui teas. Now, last week I I didn't read you. I quoted from memory. What I should have done was read to you a 2-line thing, which I want to take advantage right now. And I want to get it right because last week I got it 99% right, but you know me, I'm obsessive. I want to get it 100% right. So the Chinese, there's 2 lines in Chinese, and one says music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, wine, and tea. Oh my goodness. If we could all live our lives every day with the arts and tea. Okay, what does line number 2 say? It says firewood, rice, oil, salt, soy sauce, vinegar, and tea. So this is a famous set of lines in Chinese language. One describes the arts, the other is kind of the base of living. If you have rice, you're going to get by. If you have soy sauce and vinegar, it's going to be just fine. Oh, and at the end, if you have tea, and either of these situations, it's going to be great. So again, giving you a cultural context that tea bridges with, especially out of the Wui Mountains, it bridges classes, it bridges status, it brings order. And let's talk about that. It brings order. When you go to a tea ceremony in the Wui Mountains, everything, in some ways, it a little bit resembles a Japanese tea ceremony. I've talked about Japanese tea ceremonies a little bit. Let me elaborate what I mean. The pottery or the vessels and tools are supposed to be certain places. The spouts are supposed to point, if you're any good, the spouts point a certain way. Your hand motions are supposed to be a certain way. How much tea you pour in the cup is supposed to be a certain way. And it's all about this hierarchical relationship between the guests, that's you, that's everybody, and the server, the tea master. So there's a hierarchy, there's order. Oh, and by the way, culturally, does tea mirror a greater culture in life in China? And the answer is absolutely yes. What about when you sit down at one of these tea ceremonies? Unless you're with very old friends. If you're with strangers, there's order. What is the order? The order is what? First come, first serve? That sounds very American. It isn't first come, first serve. It is, how old are you? Okay. What is your rank in life? I got to count that too? I don't know. And in relationship to the tea master, who are you? So all of these things count. So culturally, tea follows a hierarchy. And it follows a hierarchy among strangers. It's a looser hierarchy among those who aren't strangers, but there's a hierarchy nonetheless. And it follows rules in presentation. So all of these things from a cultural standpoint, tea stands for all of these things from a cultural standpoint. We talked about last week, what else does it stand for? Well, for marriage ceremony, it stands for, in quotes, immortality. And I'm not talking about living forever, but the marriage lasting forever, an immortal marriage, so to speak. It stands for ceremony throughout society. All right, so what if in Fujian province, you're having a big argument with somebody, a really big argument? You don't even want to really look at them. Solution? Let's have a tea ceremony. And when you sit down, both sides come in the room, they sit down. Do you just start arguing? You start off where you left off? You start where you left off? The answer is no. Good manners dictate that you sit there and consume tea first. Why? It's this Taoist and Buddhist and Confucianist blend of ideals. As a Taoist, when engaged, don't engage. When in conflict, don't conflict. As a Buddhist, oh my God, this world is just an illusion. Why the heck do we care? It's just an illusion. as a Confucianist, well, wait a minute. We got the gods up here, or God, whatever. We have the emperor here mediating or receiving God's instructions. And then we have the order of society, officials, all the way down to the family, for the father, the son. We have hierarchy. So all of those things are contained in ceremony. And as such, Chinese appreciation of tea ceremony isn't necessarily the appreciation for tea ceremony here, because the starting place culturally is so different. In Fujian province, you can barely walk into any type of shop or into any meeting without starting with tea. Why? It's good to use. What does that mean? Good to use. Well, it gets everybody to the table in a thoughtful way. Once you have a thoughtful exchange, then, oh, wait a minute. Once you have a thoughtful exchange mediated by some wonderful beverage, then you can get down to business, right? Or you can get down to strategy or whatever it is you're trying to do. So let's step back one more step, and then I will have very nearly exhausted what I want to say about culture and talk about tea and alcohol. Because within Chinese culture, alcohol for a long time was kind of a mediating force as well. But let's see, what are the advantages? Well, with alcohol, people's inhibitions loosen up. And if they really don't like the color blue that you're wearing, one halfway through the meal or the session, I hate that color blue you're wearing. Oops, inhibitions loosened. And if everybody can survive the inhibitions that have been loosened, good meeting. So that was part of the alcohol culture. What about the tea culture? All right, let's have tea. We know culturally we're supposed to start to act in kind of a calmer way. So tea brings that calmness. We also know that there is a hierarchy, a greater good that we're trying to serve. We also know that tea, instead of loosening inhibitions, is going to sharpen our minds. It's going to bring us to presence and help us achieve a greater outcome. So there are a couple different ways to look again at tea and alcohol in China and see that there's really a difference in the ending point. And this is all part of a cultural difference. All right, I think I've exhausted what I wanted to talk about today in terms of tea and culture. There's still lots more to actually talk about, especially in terms of ceremonies, because remembering ceremonies, rituals, all of that, all of those lend themselves to rhythm. All of them lend themselves to presence, and all of them lend themselves to a greater good. And it's the tea, which is the string that holds that together. And wrapping this up, I said 2 minutes ago I'd almost finished, but you knew I was just teasing you. I am almost finished, but I'm not finished yet. It's that string which holds all of these things together. And remembering at the beginning I said that that string includes the arts, that is the elite in the society, and it includes the functional workers of the society, and that's really the peasants. So it includes everybody. And tea is the uniting force. And that's the beautiful thing about tea. And that's the beautiful thing that arose out of the Wuyi Mountains. Because again, you had these three disciplines where everywhere else in China, essentially, it's my disillusioned way or the highway, or it's my non-engagement or the highway, or it's my order, world of order, or the highway. Not here. Here, everybody said, hey, you know what? We're not in disagreement. We're starting a little bit differently. We're using different words, but we're not in disagreement. We can do deals together. We can be together. And this is what the beauty of Wuyi tea symbolizes. All right. Enough of that discussion. Let's see how long I've been discussing this. Okay. I want to start on another important discussion before we go to unicorn. And I'll just start because this discussion is going to take 2 sessions. So I don't have to go a lot today. But I do want to start a little bit, and that's in naming conventions. Now, everybody here at the shop knows I have naming conventions for the teas. They really exist. And some of you have really grokked them. So Jen, for example, the other day nailed it with a couple of the tea names. And she said, I know how you think. And she was very precise about that. And it was a good catch because the names aren't at random. I know they seem at random. Who the heck, unicorn? God, John, what are you doing? Well, there's reasons for that. But we're not going to talk about that today because remember, that's the understudy naming convention. I'm talking about the naming conventions in China. How in the world, over the 1,000 plus years, almost 2,000 years of Wuyi tea, did they name the teas? What led them into these poetic, sometimes flowery, sometimes inspirational namings? And remembering, I said almost 2,000 years, these teas were being named all these interesting things, even when they were just being produced as green teas rather than as cliff teas. So how did these things come about? They came about mostly from farmers and from tea aficionados who would go back to these areas and say, I want the tea that feels like, and then they describe. The farmer would know, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. And sometimes the farmer would adopt that name for all of them. I'm sorry, not for all of them. As the name that they were going to use for that tea. And sometimes they'd still have their own separate name. How about poets and writers? Did they contribute to naming conventions? Absolutely. The famous poets of the Tang Dynasty who visited or had Wuyi teas, from the Sung Dynasty, Su Shi, he had quite a few names suggested for Wuyi teas. And so there became a link with poetry, a link with Taoist history to many of these teas. As we came into the cliff tea era, so from the mid-1500s on, then there became additional naming conventions because there had always been this sense of, in quotes, rock rhyme or rock rhythm. But now, with the brewing methodology set and producing more amazing flavors and aromas, more amazing names came out. Did farmers use different names for the same varietals? They did historically on occasion. And that was more tied, not from a scientific point of view, but from an inherent sense that microclimates were just as important as different varietals. And this happens to be very true in the Wulong Mountains. You have names that are only numbers. What's that all about? Yeah, what, math geniuses coming up in the mountain? Oh, the square root of this divided by the hypotenuse of that, and we come up with a 204. No, there's actually some background about that, and we'll get to that over time. And I can go through that in great detail. So before I make you any more thirsty and make you wonder any more about what's so special about unicorn, let's go ahead and have the tea master come forth, Biju, and to demonstrate how to brew unicorn. And then you'll brew afterwards, and then we'll jump in. We'll dive in together and figure out what is special about this tea. Without further ado, the beautiful tea master.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, yes. We do unicorn, huh? So yes, I made a lot of, look at it. This is the tea master style, but I copy in China, huh? This is really good. This is ceramic. This is the tea toys. Okay, we do unicorn. So.
So she set up a fun table. And typically what she means by this is a style that you would see in China. What she really means is even though there's lots of order and there's a methodology to what's being done on a tea tray, many times, especially to a Western eye, it looks whimsical. It's not. There's an order. And that's what she really meant. There's really an order here. And so the very first thing she's doing is she's taking the receptacle teapot and pouring 200-degree water in and on it, remembering that cliff teas like lots of heat. They like concentrated heat. Let's not be confused. I said lots of heat. Would they like traveling to the sun? The answer is no. That's too much heat. But they like 200 degrees and they like it steady. The tea master puts the 6 grams of unicorn into the heated teapot, covers the teapot, shakes it, waking up the leaves. And then she's going to draw 200-degree water and pour it into the teapot. And the other thing she's going to do, I'm going to do for her, set the timer. And this is a 3-minute steeping. You notice there's a rhythm to what she does. Not in a hurry, just very steady. Pouring on top. Remember, we like heat. So what other things go into naming conventions? So the actual tea tree environment goes into naming conventions. What if it's foggy all year round? They could call a tea a foggy tea. It also goes into descriptions of tea leaves, because some tea leaves look like melon seeds in the Chinese imagination. So they would say, oh, this is melon seed tea. You also have the very, very confusing name. And let me make sure. Ah, yes. I knew I hadn't done that. The very, very confusing name of vegetal or vegetable tea. They'll refer to some teas, oh, these are vegetable teas. It's high chop. And you're thinking to yourself, ah, does this mean I can sit down and have a meal of these after I use the tea leaves? What does that mean? Yeah. Where do I look on my vegetable chart for these teas? No, what it means is it's a local varietal. And that's led rise to many of the poetic names that over the hundreds and 1,000 years have arisen, because again, depending on the microclimate, each of these vegetal varietals, while they might technically be genomically the same varietal, because of where they're growing. So there's two things, because the environment, the actual physical environment is different. So say it's growing in one of these is growing where it's the rock, the volcanic rock is broken up, the soil drainage is quite good, and the microclimate is, oh, we have 191 days of fog a year here. Same varietal, 3 miles away, it's left that nice broken up, good drainage environment. The soil is more impacted. Hey, it's sunnier here. Is the flavor going to be the same? And you notice I didn't even try and make this a trick question by saying exactly the same. No, it's not even going to be close to exact. There is a distinct difference. And as such, farmers originally believed, oh, these are inherently different teas, different varieties, when in fact they weren't. Conditions were very different. And remembering, we talked about this before, Dansha environment, you got volcanic mountains just jumping out of the land. You have fog and rainwater and occasionally snow. The rinsing the mountains, and as such, the valleys have a certain type of topsoil to them, and therefore that influences the rock rime. So over the years, this led to some ridiculous claims. One of the ridiculous claims was that there were 5,000 different varietals of cliff tea in the Wulong Mountains. I'm here to tell you today, the answer to that is no. It felt like 5,000 different. By the way, timer went off. Tea Master, while I was here talking, went ahead and separated the leaves from the tea itself. Look at this beautiful color. Very, very beautiful. You don't smell it yet, but you're in for a treat with the smell. A little hot. And you're going to enter the, no, you're not. You're going to watch me enter the quality arena. Inhalation, this is 200 degrees. You don't want to burn your taste buds. So that first time around, you're checking for astringency, degree, and location. You're thinking about aftertaste. You're thinking about energetics. Not much yet for me personally to think about energetics. That's going to come as I go deeper into this cup. Second sip, we're verifying what I think I detected on the first sip, and we're expanding to start to think about flavor and aroma. And my conclusion to you will be you're in for a beautiful experience. So it's your turn to brew. Team Master will demonstrate. Not demonstrate, will brew with you. You'll set your timers for 3 minutes. Remember, this is a 200-degree steeping. And you notice the beautiful thing that the Tea Master does is she always has rhythm. And rhythm is tremendously important. You notice I didn't say she had speed. Rhythm refers to a uniformity of speed, a uniformity and economy of, and a grace of motion, consistency of motion, purpose to motion. Heating the recipient pot. This doesn't matter whether you're using a Nishan pot or a ceramic pot. The only difference is the timings, not the technique. Technique's the same. And so you notice she looked carefully in that pot because she didn't want any leftover leaves. Because when you do that, you're going to subtly alter the output of the tea. Take bag number 2, labeled unicorn, put the leaves in whatever vessel you're going to use. Then you're going to add 200-degree water. Make sure your timers are ready at 3 minutes if you're using a Nishan pot, 3.5 if you're using ceramic. And you notice that for almost all the other teas, we say brew uncovered. That's not true for cliff teas. You brew covered. They like that heat.
The brew is low, okay? Don't tolerate, okay?
Good
It's
point.
low, yeah.
The pour is low so that you control. You have good control as you're pouring. You're not trying to splash the water
Yeah.
around your bed.
And one more thing is, so this I like it. This also is good too. So why you use this one, doesn't use this one this time? You know why? I know this tea like a hot, humid. This speed is fast. Look, this longer. This is different. 你告诉我这个是不同的泡子。
Yeah, you saw that the spout lengths are different.
Yeah.
So you keep and retain that heat longer. And when you have the longer spout, it loses some of the heat as you're pouring it out. So you use the shorter spout, retains the heat. You're in the clay pot, that retains the heat. It transfers that heat into this clay pot. All right. Oh, and you set your timer for 3 minutes.
Just one early comment.
Yeah.
The dry leaves are wonderfully fragrant and complex. I sense chocolate and apricot.
Chocolate and apricot in those warmed or just plain
The
old
dry leaves.
Dry leaves, yeah. Chocolate and apricot in the dry leaves. Yeah, this is the roasting on this is incredible. And those are fair, very fair opening comments about this tea. So in terms of other naming conventions, we've gotten it down from 5,000 to some number less than 5,000. Does anyone know the exact number? And the answer to that would be no. Nobody knows the exact number of varietals that there are out there. Probably close to 1,000 would be my guess. But again, nobody's quite sure because some varietals may have only 2 or 3 bushes. There have been many varietals which have been transplanted from southern Fujian into the Wulong Mountains. There have been hybrids that the research has created, but the overall exact number still isn't 100% known. And that's the real reason why. So you'll hear many, many different ideas about how many are there, but the reality is nobody's quite sure. Nobody's quite sure. And this is the reason, because so many different things go into why and how this gets this way. And that is how the tea bushes get counted and what constitutes a Wulong tea. Cliff tea. All right, 3 minutes has expired. You're going to separate the tea leaves from the tea water. Taking a look at the beautiful color of that. You're detecting the wonderful aromas, realizing that the picture is gone. Ah, am I back on? No.
Just one more moment.
Mhm.
Here we go.
Yeah. No, not yet.
Microphone is on, but the picture not yet.
Okay, I have magically reappeared. And you know, this is why this tea was named Unicorn. And I had forgotten to tell the producer that when we make this tea and the camera detects it, it goes out of its mind and it becomes blank because it's enjoying the aroma of this tea so much. So now you know what the inside story is on the John name for this particular tea. Yes.
Second comment. I find both in the smell as well as the taste an all pervasive, but not affrontive apricot. The minerality and astringency begin to come more to the forefront in further sips. I find it subtly powerful.
This is a great, interesting start because it talks about a pervasiveness of apricot in the smell, in the aroma, and the taste.
In both smell and the taste.
Smell and the taste. And it talks about it just getting stronger as time goes on. So everybody is going to have a slightly different starting point to this, but it is acceptable to have slightly different interpretations of this. But I absolutely accept that there is a fruitiness. Apricot is a good way to call out that fruitiness in this tea. This comment said something else as it moved down, which was important too. What was the rest of this comment?
The minerality and astringency begin to
that's
come
right.
more to the forefront in further sips.
Okay, so in the beginning, yes, this is a perceptive comment because it really implies in the beginning the flavor, which is identified as apricot, dominates, and then the minerality and astringency starts to make an appearance. And that is part of what's special about this tea. No matter, again, what you title the flavor, that thing is a driver. And then you get oh yeah, this is real tea too.
Okay, we'll do it in a few parts. This is a great comment. I love the scent on this. It's very fun. This will sound strange, but I keep getting just a hint of the red and pink starburst. Yes, the candy at the top, but red plum and some sort of vine or young wood more deeply.
I love this comment. This is very interesting. So there's brighter, lighter, almost a sense of sweetness at the top, underneath a real sense of fruit. Plum and what else? Apricot?
But red plum and some sort of vine or young wood.
Okay, red plum or vine and young wood. So really what's being addressed here is there's not, as is so typical with the best of the cliff teas, as you go down and drink down, you're unwrapping layer after layer after layer.
The comment continues, the tea water is smooth. I get a lot of citrus, a hint of honey and apricot. Overall, very smooth. And I like that as it cools, the roasted flavor doesn't turn heavily into fenugreek, which is something that happens with a lot of Wulong for me.
So, smooth, and the tea water itself has, well, let's jump to the end. It doesn't turn into the commentator said fenugreek, and I think maybe the best way to translate is a big spiciness at the very end. Doesn't turn that. It stays in that smooth and fruity flavor all the way through. And let's back up a minute because I realize I took fenugreek to mean spiciness. That's not really what this commentator meant, I don't think. I really think that the commentator meant, because as I'm tasting through this, I think I know exactly where the commentator is going, and that sometimes you get a rawness of minerality as you go through the flavors. You get the mellowness, smoothness, fruitiness, and then it ends up with a rawness of minerality. And this does not do that. This, and I love the fact that you address that smoothness, because that's a lead for me. This thing is incredibly smooth and incredibly, for all the flavor, it is something that grows on you as you continue to drink it.
This is a general comment about cliff teas. I'm finding lately how much the tea reveals about who I am as I drink it. Sometimes against my wishes, as was last week, where I didn't have the energy to meet the whole cup. Today I'm meeting it, but I'm not bringing anything extra to meet it.
Oh, I love this comment because this comment is a comment about all of us and how we approach tea. Because there's lots of different ways to approach tea, just like there's lots of different ways to approach any situation. You can be fully present and fully engaged. And the commentators said last week they weren't fully engaged. This week they are fully engaged, and it brings a different feeling. And when you are dealing with cliff teas, if you're not fully engaged, that's usually, especially the cliff teas. These aren't frou-frou. They're not easy. They don't reveal themselves completely at the beginning and therefore require attention. No attention, not no attention, but less attention, less that you get. More attention, the more you get out of it. And this comment is great about that, because that's really the reality of when you drink these cliff teas.
One of the things we know about oolong teas is that they change over time.
That's right.
Have you ever
Excuse me.
had a tea where over time it's changed so much that you needed to change the name?
What a great question. Okay, so there is a premise here, and the premise is correct. Cliff teas change over time. All teas change over time, but cliff teas in particular change over time. So the questioner says, given this premise to be true, have we ever encountered a situation where you one day wake up and drink this tea or any cliff tea and realize the name doesn't fit anymore? Let me give it a new name. And so that's really interesting. I've never done that. Yeah. Mm. 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 Oh, now this is an interesting comment. From a scientific point of view, the answer would be no. But actually, Biju just made a very good comment that with the southern Fujian teas, you do from year to year sometimes get changes in the names just because the nature of the flavor. Yeah, the flavor has changed, particularly the Iron Goddess series of teas. You can tend to get that because the changes occur so fast. Great comment.
How deep in the mountains does this tea come from?
This is from what they would call Zhang'an. So this is from within the mountains. It is that central area, and I would say it's not right in the very center of it. It's probably a little to the south of the center of it. All right. I like it. This is not necessarily, it's an easy tea to drink. It's not necessarily an easy tea to keep full focus on. But there's a reward for keeping full focus on. Love the commentary this week. This has been wonderful. We love this tea. We also love what you're going to get next week. Next week, you're getting yearning. So, thank you for great commentary today. Looking forward to seeing everybody next week with yearning. In the meantime, this week, stay healthy. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.